They don't want you to see this. Not the media, not the systems that control this world, and certainly not the forces operating in the shadows. Because the moment you truly wake up, everything changes. Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, something invisible keeps blocking your way? That opportunities slip through your fingers? That your mind is under attack, filling with doubts, anxieties, and fears that seem to come from nowhere? My friend, that's not a coincidence. That's a war you've been fighting your entire life, without even knowing it. Now, let me ask you something. What if the greatest deception of all time wasn't just about lies, but about convincing you that the enemy doesn't even exist? That demons are just superstition, that spiritual warfare is a fairy tale, that your struggles are just life. That's exactly how they operate, by keeping you distracted, numb, and unaware of what's really going on. But here's what they fear the most, you waking up. Because when you start seeing the hidden hand behind the chaos, behind the oppression, behind the relentless cycle of struggles, you become dangerous to them. But today, everything changes. This is the moment the blindfold comes off. In this video, you're going to see the unseen, understand why things happen the way they do, why certain patterns repeat, and most importantly, how to break free. The battle has already been won, but as long as you stay in the dark, the enemy will keep acting like he's in control. So I ask you, are you ready to know the truth they don't want you to see? Because once you do, there's no turning back. The world we see is just a fraction of reality. While people walk the streets, work, and live their daily routines, there is an invisible realm operating in parallel. This spiritual dimension governs much of what happens in the physical world, but most people are completely unaware of it. Imagine if, all of a sudden, you could see what happens behind the scenes of existence. It would be shocking to realize that unseen forces influence political decisions, global events, and even the small details of your personal life. In His wisdom, God prevents us from seeing it all because the raw truth would be unbearable for the human mind. Even though we cannot see it, the signs are everywhere. Some situations in life seem inexplicable. Opportunities that suddenly vanish, feelings of heaviness and distress with no clear cause, repetitive cycles of failure and discouragement. What many fail to understand is that not everything is just a consequence of human choices or mere chance. There is a war happening. The Bible warns us about this invisible battle where angels and demons fight over territories and influence. And in this scenario, ignorance can be deadly, because those who don't realize they are being manipulated have already lost the fight without even knowing it. This lack of awareness is one of the enemy's greatest advantages. After all, an adversary who goes unrecognized can act freely without resistance. When we look at history, we see that crucial moments were shaped by invisible forces, leaders who made reckless decisions, societies corrupted by destructive ideologies, nations that collapsed under influences that seemed purely human but had much deeper roots. The spiritual world is not a fantasy. It is a battlefield, where those who understand its rules gain a massive advantage. And if you think this is an exaggerated topic, maybe it's because hidden forces want to keep you blind to the truth. Most people go through life without realizing they are being influenced by forces they cannot see. It's easy to assume that every decision, every thought, and every cultural trend is purely the result of human reasoning. But what if there's more to it? Just as an artist carefully crafts a masterpiece with precision, unseen forces subtly shape societies, ideologies, and even personal beliefs. This influence is often subtle, creeping into the way we think, what we watch, and even the laws that govern nations. It's not always about dramatic possessions or supernatural events. It's about control, and the most effective way to control someone is by making them believe they are acting entirely on their own. Entertainment, politics, and even education are often breeding grounds for this hidden influence. Consider how certain values and behaviors that were once seen as unacceptable are now widely embraced. Did humanity collectively evolve, or was there a deliberate, step-by-step process designed to shift public perception? The enemy's greatest strategy is deception, making evil seem normal, acceptable, even desirable. This is why certain leaders, artists, and influencers gain enormous popularity despite promoting destructive behaviors. The Bible warns that Satan masquerades as an angel of light, meaning his influence is rarely obvious. It is polished, refined, and often disguised as progress. But how do you recognize this influence in your own life? Start by asking yourself, are the things I consume, watch, and believe pushing me toward truth or away from it? Does what I follow challenge me to grow spiritually, or does it numb my awareness? The moment you begin questioning, you start waking up. But here's the real challenge. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And if the enemy has gone to such lengths to keep people blind, there must be a reason. What could possibly be so dangerous about people discovering the full extent of this unseen battle? Well, the answer is about to unfold. Movies and entertainment are often dismissed as just fiction, but what if some of them reveal deeper truths? Nefarious is a perfect example of this. A Christian horror film that does more than just entertain. It exposes the subtle yet terrifying ways in which the enemy operates. Unlike typical horror films that rely on cheap jump scares, this movie digs into the real horror, spiritual warfare happening right under our noses. The film doesn't just tell a story. It forces the audience to confront an uncomfortable reality. Evil is not just a concept, it's an intelligent force actively working against humanity. And the worst part? Most people don't even notice. The power of nefarious lies in how it dismantles the illusion that demonic influence is always dramatic or obvious. The protagonist isn't haunted by grotesque figures or eerie shadows. Instead, the darkness reveals itself through manipulation, lies, and psychological control. This is how the enemy truly works, by planting ideas, distorting perceptions, and twisting reality so subtly that people never question it. The Bible itself warns about this kind of deception, reminding us that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. And what better way to do that than through the very thing people use to escape reality? Entertainment? But what does this mean for those watching? It's more than just an unsettling movie. It's a wake-up call. If a film like Nefarious can peel back the curtain on the enemy's tactics, then perhaps we should start questioning what other messages are being hidden in plain sight. What are we unknowingly consuming? What ideologies are subtly shaping the way we think? And if the entertainment industry is capable of revealing such truths, how much more is it capable of distorting them? If this one film can shake people's perceptions, imagine what would happen if more people truly started paying attention. The greatest battlefield isn't the physical world, it's the mind. The enemy knows that if he can control how a person thinks, he doesn't need chains to keep them bound. This is why so many people live trapped in cycles of fear, doubt, and confusion without even realizing they are under spiritual attack. Just like Peter, who tried to stop Jesus from going to the cross, many well-intentioned people are unknowingly influenced by forces that twist their emotions and thoughts. The enemy doesn't always come with loud threats. Sometimes he whispers, planting ideas that seem rational, but slowly lead a person away from truth. Think about how emotions can dictate actions. One moment of anger can destroy a relationship. One wave of despair can lead someone to give up on their dreams. The enemy exploits these weaknesses, turning fleeting emotions into permanent strongholds. The Bible repeatedly warns about guarding the mind because it is through distorted perceptions that people make self-destructive choices. How many times have you believed a lie about yourself? That you're not good enough, that you'll never succeed, that no one cares? These aren't just thoughts. They are weapons formed against you. And the more you accept them, the stronger they become. So how do you fight back? Awareness is the first step. Every time a negative thought enters your mind, ask yourself, is this true or is this manipulation? Fill your heart with wisdom from Scripture. Surround yourself with people who encourage growth and never accept defeat as final. The enemy's goal is to make people believe they have no power, but the truth is, the moment you recognize the attack, you've already begun to break free. And once you realize how much influence these forces have over human perception, the next question becomes, where else are they working behind the scenes? The Bible is filled with accounts of demonic activity, yet many people dismiss these stories as outdated myths. But if we take a closer look, these ancient texts reveal patterns that are still present today. One of the most striking examples is the story of 1/3 of the angels falling with Satan. This wasn't just a rebellion. It was a deliberate attempt to corrupt everything good. These fallen beings didn't just vanish. they continue to work behind the scenes, influencing nations, cultures, and even personal choices. Understanding their tactics isn't about fear, it's about strategy. After all, how can you fight an enemy you don't even believe exists? One of the most chilling biblical accounts is when Jesus confronted a man possessed by a legion of demons. Instead of simply leaving, these spirits begged to be cast into 2,000 pigs, which then threw themselves off a cliff. This reveals something critical. Demons seek bodies to inhabit. They don't just roam freely. They look for hosts, whether humans, animals, or even ideologies. This raises an uncomfortable question. If demonic influence was this active in biblical times, why would it be any different today? Perhaps the real reason people don't see these manifestations as often is because the enemy has adapted his methods. Another powerful account is the story of a woman who suffered for 18 years due to a demonic affliction. What's fascinating is that her condition wasn't diagnosed as a spiritual problem at first. It was seen as a physical ailment. Jesus, however, recognized the deeper cause and set her free. This makes us wonder, how many modern struggles, mental, emotional, or even physical, could have a spiritual root? Of course, not every problem is supernatural, but dismissing the possibility entirely is exactly what the enemy wants. Because if people never suspect spiritual interference, they will never fight against it. Spiritual warfare isn't just a metaphor. It's a daily battle, whether people realize it or not. The Bible describes the enemy as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, but most people walk through life unaware of the danger. Unlike physical wars, this battle isn't fought with weapons but with influence, deception, and fear. The enemy doesn't need to attack with brute force when he can simply distort reality. How many people have abandoned their purpose because of a single thought planted in their minds? How many dreams have been crushed by subtle discouragement? If you don't recognize the battlefield, you're already losing. What's terrifying is how strategic these attacks are. The enemy doesn't just aim at individuals. He works on a larger scale, influencing governments, media, and culture. Wars aren't always started by bullets. Sometimes they begin with a whisper in the ear of a leader. Families aren't always broken by major crises. Sometimes they erode through small manipulations over time. The greatest trick of darkness is making people believe they're safe when, in reality, they are slowly being led away from truth. This is why the Bible commands vigilance, because spiritual warfare is subtle, and by the time most realize they're in the fight, they've already suffered major losses. But here's the good news. Every battle has a way to victory. The first step is awareness, understanding that the enemy operates in ways that aren't always obvious. The second is preparation, arming yourself with truth, wisdom, and discernment. And the third, action. The greatest warriors are not the strongest. They're the ones who stay alert, who recognize the strategies being used against them, and who refuse to surrender. Because when you understand how this battle works, the next question becomes, how do you break free from the enemy's grip? When it comes to spiritual warfare, one of the most powerful weapons is prayer. It's not just words spoken into the air. It's a direct line to divine intervention. Many people struggle with burdens they can't explain. Constant setbacks, overwhelming fear, or a sense that something is always working against them. These aren't just coincidences. The enemy's goal is to keep people trapped in cycles of frustration, making them believe that nothing will ever change. But the moment someone prays with authority, declaring freedom over their life, chains begin to break. Because the truth is, no demonic influence can stand against the power of God. Deliverance prayer isn't about performing rituals or repeating memorized words. It's about speaking truth with conviction. Imagine someone trying to fight a battle without knowing how to use their weapons. That's how many people approach prayer. They say the words, but deep down they doubt their effectiveness. But when prayer is combined with faith, it becomes unstoppable. Jesus himself cast out demons with a single command, showing that authority isn't in the volume of your voice but in the certainty of your belief. And here's the key. Prayer isn't just about asking for freedom. It's about declaring it and walking in it daily. But deliverance doesn't end with a single prayer. True freedom requires action. Changing habits, cutting off toxic influences, and filling your life with truth. Imagine breaking free from a prison only to walk right back in because it feels familiar. That's what happens when people pray for deliverance but continue engaging in the very things that kept them bound. A transformed life requires new patterns, new environments, and a commitment to staying spiritually awake. Because once the enemy loses control over someone, he will try to find a way back in. The question is, will you be ready to shut the door for good? Now that you've seen the truth, the real question is, what are you going to do with it? Because knowing about spiritual warfare isn't enough. You have to take action. The enemy thrives on passivity, on people who hear, understand, and then do nothing. That's how he keeps control. But now you know how he operates. You've seen how deception works, how manipulation shapes society, and how the unseen world influences the visible. So ask yourself, will you keep living as if none of this matters, or will you fight back? It starts with your mind, what you allow in, what you believe, and what you refuse to question. It moves into your actions, the choices you make, the habits you break, and the disciplines you build. And ultimately, it shows in your faith, because the greatest weapon against the enemy isn't fear, but truth. The moment you stand firm, knowing who you are and the power you carry, everything begins to change. But remember this, the more aware you become, the more resistance you'll face. The enemy won't go down without a fight. Will you be ready when he strikes? Now, I challenge you, don't keep this to yourself. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Don't let them stay blind to what's happening around them. And most importantly, stay connected. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and keep diving deeper into the truth. Because this is just the beginning. The battle is real. The war is now. And the victory, that's up to you.